I watched the original Dragon Ball anime last year, and I honestly gotta say, I loved it. It was honestly one of the most wholesome, unique, and just relaxing experiences I've had with anime in a long time. However, when I was first getting into Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z and all this stuff, I kept looking up, how to watch, the watch order, what's the requirements to have to watch original to watch Z and all this stuff, right? And I feel like online, most people suggested I skip the original Dragon Ball anime. And now that I've actually went through and watched the original Dragon Ball anime, I'm kind of confused why everyone would suggest to skip it. You don't tell people to skip Naruto and go straight to Shippuden. It's a sequel series for a reason. Why wouldn't you watch the original? So again, I did just that. I watched the original series for myself and I loved it. So anyone that told me to skip the original, thank you for making me lose faith in humanity. And while I'm still posting my Dragon Ball Z videos just because I'm slow as fuck to script and edit videos, I have finished it. And I really wanted to get this video out just in case anyone else is considering starting Dragon Ball and is confused on where they should start. First off, this video is going to be spoiler free. I might name drop some characters and whatnot, but no major plot details will be discussed here. So if you are considering watching Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z, you can watch this video and get a good idea without me ruining your life and potentially depriving you from one of the greatest anime series ever made. With that said, could you watch Dragon Ball Z without watching the original Dragon Ball? In the same way you could drive a car without a license and then maybe go straight into a wall. See, the issue isn't that you can't immediately start Z, it's more just that you shouldn't. Have you guys ever taken someone to see like a Marvel movie and they go, yeah, I haven't seen, the first 20 movies or anything like that, but I'm sure I'll have a good time and, be able to enjoy the new Ant-Man or whatever. It's kind of like that. Like, could you watch Z and still have a good time? Sure. Or you could stop this nonsense and love yourself for once and give yourself what you truly deserve. A satisfying, iconic series with great storytelling that constantly evolves and honestly keeps me laughing every time. See, that's one of the biggest reasons why people say to actually avoid the original Dragon Ball anime. It's because it's not as action-packed as DBZ and doesn't have the same iconic fight scenes and villains. However, I think they're missing a huge thing here. Dragon Ball is the prologue to what Goku's story ends up being in Dragon Ball Z eventually. So the original Dragon Ball, being the first show in the series, has the job of explaining the world and our characters, right? So when the show first starts, we meet Goku when he's still a kid. And the story isn't focused on this guy trying to save the world or the universe or anything crazy like that. It actually takes the exact opposite approach and almost gives us a slice of life, maybe even a coming of age story. See, the show gives us Goku, but honestly, Goku has really no motivations when we first see him. The only thing that he wants is to honestly just see his grandpa, or meet him, or find out what happened to him. And that's when Bulma hits him with her car and runs him over, because she has a dragon radar and she's looking for the Dragon Balls to wish herself a boyfriend.
There is no way.
I'm not kidding, that is literally how the entire world of Dragon Ball starts off, at least in the show. It jumps off with Bulma wanting to wish herself a boyfriend with the Dragon Balls. See, Bulma wants a boy, but she's so corny and can't find a guy herself, so she needs to go, all Aladdin on us to kind of wish for one. And Goku just joins her on this mission because he happens to have one of the Dragon Balls already due to his grandpa leaving it to him when he went missing. And I'm not going to explain too much more of the original Dragon Ball plot just for spoilers, but we spend the whole show with Goku, Bulma, and meet iconic characters for the first time like Roshi, Krillin, Kami, Chi-Chi, and yes, probably my favorite Dragon Ball character, Oolong. God, I miss Oolong. The whole show is about them collecting these Dragon Balls while a team of evildoers tries to stop them and get them, basically. It's a pretty simple cat and mouse kind of concept. And this sounds pretty basic so far, but we get the groundwork here for everything that ends up in Z and that Z eventually builds off on. We learn about Goku's backstory, how he grew up, how he trained, and how he developed as a person. We also learn about the Dragon Balls for the first time in this series, which holds a constant grip in the series throughout. We learn about the androids and the Red Ribbon Army for the very first time in the original Dragon Ball series, and that also kind of lays the groundwork for what happens with the androids and the Cell Saga in DBZ. We also learn about Kami and Piccolo and their relationship, and that lays a bunch more out for the Namek Saga as well. So then, does everything in the original Dragon Ball have a huge impact on Dragon Ball Z? Honestly, no, it doesn't. But that doesn't take away from the fact that this series on its own is a really great show. If you take DBZ out the room entirely, this show still has easily some of the funniest moments in Dragon Ball, and honestly an anime that I've ever seen. The show also has some of the most wholesome and genuine moments as well. It honestly really had me moved a few times in the show throughout, and not to mention maybe it's just kind of the old animation or soundtracks, but this show just oozes Saturday morning cartoon vibes. Like, as soon as I put it on, I feel like I was teleported back to when I was a kid just watching, Saturday morning cartoons, eating breakfast. And trust me, Saturday morning, grab some Fruit Loops or something, turn this thing on, and tell me you are not instantly transported back to your childhood. So let's be clear, you should watch the original Dragon Ball. It connects to everything that Dragon Ball Z does end up doing and lays a ton of the structure that Dragon Ball Z eventually builds off of. And also explains a lot of what our characters are, their relationships, and general motivations when we first meet them. It's also a very funny and enjoyable series all on its own. There's legitimately no reason to skip this show. I have no idea why people suggest that, others skip it when they're first starting out. Without this show, you would have no real info on Piccolo and Kami's relationship. You'd also miss out on the great backstory of the Red Ribbon Army saga, which in my opinion would diminish the entire satisfaction out of the androids and Cell sagas. You would also not get to see Goku's origins, because by the time we get to Dragon Ball Z, he is pretty much past being a kid and is entirely grown at that point. So in original Dragon Ball, we're able to see him as a little boy, starting to learn and see himself make mistakes and stumble into who he ends up being in Dragon Ball Z. And isn't that kind of what anime is all about, growing and, seeing how our characters grow? I understand why some people suggest to skip the original Dragon Ball, maybe just for time constraints. This show is honestly just so charming. It wears its heart on its sleeve and it's unapologetically old, and I kind of like it. The animation just so ancient looking, and it almost just has a huge nostalgia kick. Even though I didn't even watch the show when it was coming out, I still feel that nostalgia vibe from it. It has the same vibe from when you see like a slam dunk screenshot. Like, it's just has this old aesthetic to it that for some reason still looks interesting and pleasing to look at, and kind of just makes you want to watch more of it or at least get into it. And yeah, the original Dragon Ball is older than DBZ, so the animation and pacing feels a bit dated. I cannot argue there, but honestly I don't mind it. And while I know people have skipped original Dragon Ball and went straight to Z and still had a good time, I know for a fact that those people would have seen the original Dragon Ball first, it probably would have made their Dragon Ball Z watch experience that much more better. So I'm not saying you can't go straight to Z and skip original Dragon Ball. Again, I'm just saying if you love yourself or even value yourself as a human being at all, you would go with the original first. Unless you hate children, then you can go to Z, since you hate kids and hate a good coming of age story told by one of the greatest storytellers of all time. With all that said, did I convert you to watch the original Dragon Ball? Did you skip it and go straight to Z? I would love to know your guys' thoughts on this, and let me know how your journey through Dragon Ball went and how it's going. Check out my other videos. I have tons of videos on Dragon Ball. You can watch this one here for my original Dragon Ball review that I posted when I just finished it, and you can watch this video here for a more recent video of mine. Thanks for watching to the end, and have a good one.